The battlefield was quiet now, but not with peace. Smoke rose from the ruins of metal ships and broken machines. The ground was dark with ash and the air smelled of fire and dust. Daniel walked carefully among the wreckage, his steps slow and heavy. He was alone. His unit had been scattered during the fighting, and he did not know if anyone had survived. The war between humans and the Crithari had been long and merciless. The Crithari were feared across the galaxy, tall, armored beings with sharp claws and voices like thunder. Their queen was said to be the strongest of them all, a warrior unmatched in battle. Every human soldier had been told stories of her power, and most believed they would never live to see her with their own eyes. Daniel was tired, his armor broken, and his weapon nearly out of power. Still, he moved forward, searching for shelter or a signal that might guide him back to his people. His heart was heavy, but his spirit was not yet broken. Then he heard it. A low sound, like a growl mixed with a cry of pain, drifted from the shadows of a half-destroyed ship. Daniel froze. His hand went to his weapon, though he knew it would do little against anything still alive here. Quietly he stepped closer, pushing aside a piece of shattered metal. What he saw made his breath catch. It was her, the Crithari queen. She lay against the wreckage, her armor cracked, her body wounded. Her sharp crown-like crest was broken in places, and her dark eyes glowed faintly, filled with fury and pain. Even injured, she was imposing, her form larger and stronger than any human's. Daniel's first thought was to run. His second thought was to finish her. The stories said the queen would never surrender, never forgive, never spare an enemy. If she lived, she would rise again and humans would suffer. But when he looked at her closely, he saw something unexpected. She was breathing hard, struggling to move, her clawed hands trembling as she tried to lift herself. For the first time, she did not look like an untouchable warrior. She looked fragile. Daniel lowered his weapon. The queen's eyes narrowed as she saw him. Her voice, though weak, carried power. "Human, do it, end me. That is what your kind desires, is it not?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No," he said. His voice was calm, though his heart beat fast. "I won't kill you." The queen's gaze burned into him, confused and suspicious. "Mercy from a human? I do not believe it. You play tricks," but Daniel knelt beside her. He set his weapon aside and reached into the small pack on his belt. Inside were bandages, water, and a few supplies, barely enough for himself. Still, he began to clean the wound on her side, ignoring the way she tensed as if ready to strike him. "You are my enemy," she growled. "Why save me?" Daniel gave a faint smile, though it did not reach his tired eyes. "Because you are hurt. That is reason enough." The queen fell silent. Her kind did not believe in such ideas. To the Crithari, weakness was shame and kindness was foolishness. Yet this human, broken and alone, chose to help her when he had every reason not to. For a while she only watched him, her eyes sharp, her breath slow and heavy. She expected him to betray her at any moment, to stab her while she was vulnerable, but instead, he wrapped her wound carefully, offered her water and sat back as if it were the most natural thing to do. Daniel leaned against the metal wall beside her. "You'll live," he said simply. The queen studied him in silence. Her pride screamed that she should strike him down even in her weakened state. Yet something inside her hesitated. No human had ever shown her such defiance, not with a blade but with mercy. Finally, she spoke again. "No warrior of my kind should ever be shown mercy. What game do you play, human?" Daniel turned his head toward the dark sky, where smoke still drifted from fallen ships. His voice was quiet, almost weary. "No game, just humanity." The queen did not understand, but the words stayed with her, like an echo she could not silence. The night grew colder. Around them, the battlefield remained still, but both knew it was only a matter of time before others came searching. Daniel kept his weapon close, yet his focus remained on keeping her alive. He had no plan, no allies, and little hope, but he knew one thing clearly. He would not let her die here, not like this. And deep within her, though she did not show it, the queen felt something she had never known before: doubt. For the first time in her long reign as a warrior, she wondered if strength alone was truly the greatest power in the galaxy. The sun rose slowly over the ruined battlefield. Its pale light touched the broken metal and burned soil, giving everything a strange, lifeless glow. Daniel sat awake, his back against a piece of twisted steel. He had not slept much. He knew the Krithari could send scouts at any time. He also knew the human army might sweep the area, searching for survivors. Beside him, the Krithari queen stirred. Her wounds were wrapped with rough bandages, and though her strength had not returned fully, her eyes were sharp again. When she saw Daniel watching her, she narrowed her gaze. "You are still here," she said. Her voice was low, as if she did not believe it herself. Daniel nodded. "I wasn't planning to leave." She tilted her head, studying him as if he were some strange creature she had never seen before. In truth, that was exactly what he was to her. "Foolish," she muttered. "You waste your chance. If you had run, perhaps your kind would have found you by now." Daniel gave a small shrug. "And leave you to die?" "I couldn't." Her eyes hardened. "I am your enemy. If I lived, I would kill your soldiers without hesitation." "You know this." Daniel looked at her seriously. "Yes, but right now you're not killing anyone. Right now you're hurt and I can help." "That's enough." The queen did not reply. She turned her head away, staring at the horizon. In her culture, mercy was weakness, kindness was a chain that bound the strong. Yet this human acted as if kindness was a weapon. For hours they remained in silence, listening to the distant sounds of war still echoing beyond the hills. At last the queen spoke again. "What is your name, human?" "Daniel," he answered simply. "And you?" Her lips curved in a faint, sharp smile. "You ask as though I will gift you my name freely. Among the Krithari, only the strong may speak a queen's name. You have not earned that right." Daniel chuckled softly. "Fair enough. Then I'll call you Queen, if that works." She gave him a look filled with both annoyance and something else, curiosity. "Strange creature," she whispered. As the day passed, Daniel shared his meager supplies. A little water, a few protein rations. Barely enough for one, but now split between two. The queen took them with pride, refusing to show weakness, though hunger clearly pressed against her pride. At one point, Daniel broke the silence. "Why do your people fight us? Is it really just to conquer?" The queen's eyes gleamed. "To conquer is to live. The Krithari believe the galaxy belongs to the strong. Those who cannot fight deserve to be ruled. That is our law, and mercy? Where does that fit?" Daniel asked. She gave a sharp laugh, though it was dry and bitter from thirst. "Mercy is a lie the weak tell themselves. It has no place among warriors." Daniel thought for a moment before replying. "Funny, because right now mercy is the only reason you're alive." Her expression darkened, but she did not argue. Deep inside, she knew the truth of his words. Still, she could not accept it easily. That night, as they found shelter inside the wreck of a small ship, the queen suddenly asked him a question. "Do humans never kill without mercy? Do you always show kindness even to your enemies?" Daniel sighed. "No, we fight, we kill. We defend ourselves. But sometimes when we have the chance, we choose another way. Not because it's easy, but because it's right." The queen frowned deeply. "Right? What is right but the strength to decide your own path?" "Maybe," Daniel said softly. "But strength without compassion destroys everything. Sooner or later you lose more than you gain." The queen fell silent, his words resting uneasily in her mind. She wanted to dismiss them, to call them weakness, but a small voice inside her whispered otherwise. Days passed. They moved slowly together, avoiding both Krithari patrols and human search teams. Daniel kept helping her, guiding her when she was weak, sharing what little food they found. She, in turn, began to watch his back, warning him of dangers he would not have noticed. It was strange, almost unreal. Two enemies, walking side by side. At first she kept expecting betrayal, but each day Daniel proved his intentions true. One evening, as they sat near the dim glow of a fallen ship's power core, she spoke again. "You confuse me, Daniel. No human has ever acted this way before. Your people fight us with fire and steel, but you fight me with kindness. Why?" Daniel looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "Because if we only see each other as enemies, this war will never end. Someone has to try to break that cycle. Maybe it starts here." The queen's breath caught. For the first time, she felt something unusual stir within her. A flicker of respect, perhaps even admiration. She quickly buried it, but the feeling lingered. Their uneasy bond grew stronger when danger came. One night, a Krithari scouting party found them. Daniel spotted their glowing eyes in the dark just moments before they attacked. He raised his weapon, firing quickly, but it was nearly empty. The queen, though still weak, rose to her full height and let out a roar that shook the air. The scouts hesitated, shocked to see their queen alive but standing beside a human. In that instant of hesitation, Daniel managed to wound one of them. The queen struck the others with surprising strength, her claws tearing through the shadows. When the fight ended, 3 scouts lay fallen, and the last one fled. Daniel breathed hard, his weapon smoking in his hand. He glanced at the queen, who stood tall, her chest rising and falling with pride. "You saved me," he said, still catching his breath. The queen looked at him with narrowed eyes. "You saved me first. This is balance." But her words did not hide the truth she felt inside. She had acted not just out of balance, but out of loyalty, a bond she had never expected to form. Later, as they sat together once more, the queen whispered to herself, almost too low for him to hear, "Why do I hesitate? No human should matter to me." But Daniel heard, and though he said nothing, a faint smile touched his lips. He did not know what their future held. He only knew that something was changing, between them and perhaps beyond. For the first time, the great warrior queen of the Crithari began to wonder if the human way of survival, through kindness, trust, and compassion, was not weakness at all, but a strength far greater than endless war. And that thought frightened her more than any enemy ever had. The days of uneasy travel ended sooner than Daniel expected. For a short time, he and the queen had found a rhythm, sharing food, walking in silence, guarding each other when danger lurked. He had almost started to believe they could keep moving unnoticed, hidden from both armies, but the galaxy was not so forgiving. It happened at dawn. The air was still, filled with the faint sound of distant machines. Daniel had been gathering scraps of metal from the wreckage of an old transport ship, hoping to build a signal beacon. The queen stood nearby, her strength returning more each day, though her body still carried the weight of healing wounds. Suddenly, a harsh cry echoed across the valley. Daniel froze. The queen's eyes narrowed instantly. "Crithari," she said, her voice sharp with warning. Out of the shadows, armored figures emerged. A hunting party of Crithari warriors, 6 of them, tall and armed with plasma blades that glowed faintly in the morning light. Their eyes locked first on Daniel, then on the queen. Surprise flickered across their faces. One of them stepped forward, his crest sharp and unbroken. "My queen." "You live." His tone carried shock but also suspicion. "And yet you stand beside a human." The queen's jaw tightened. Daniel could see the storm brewing in her eyes. For a moment he wondered if she would deny him, cast him aside to protect herself. But she stood firm, her presence as commanding as ever. "This human saved my life," she declared. "He is under my protection." The warriors exchanged uneasy glances. One of them let out a low growl. "A human. Protected. This is dishonor." Before Daniel could react, strong hands seized him from behind. He was dragged to the ground, his weapon torn from his grip. He struggled, but the Crithari were too strong. "Stop!" the queen roared, her voice thunderous. All 6 warriors paused, uncertain, but the leader shook his head. "You weaken yourself, my queen. To show mercy to prey is to invite ruin. You have been poisoned by this human's lies." Daniel, forced to his knees, met the queen's gaze. He expected her to abandon him now, to regain her place by proving her loyalty to her kind. He would not blame her, yet even as the blade pressed close to his neck, she did not look away. "No," she said firmly. "He will not be harmed." The warriors hesitated again. Her authority was powerful, but doubt had already planted itself in their minds. To them, their queen was the symbol of strength, the example all followed. And yet here she was, protecting the very enemy they were sworn to destroy. Finally, the leader gave a short command. "Bind them both. Let the council judge this. Betrayal." Daniel's wrists were tied with energy cuffs, the kind that numbed the muscles and burned if one resisted. He was marched through the ruins beside the queen, who walked tall despite the chains around her own arms. They were taken into the heart of a Crithari encampment. Towering spires of black metal rose above tents of woven fiber, glowing faintly with alien lights. The camp was alive with movement. Warriors sharpening their weapons, engineers repairing ships, banners fluttering with the crest of the Crithari. Daniel felt every eye on him. The humans were hated here. He was prey among predators. The queen, however, was greeted with both awe and suspicion. Whispers followed her as they walked. "She lives. But why does she protect the human? Has she fallen?" At last they were thrown into a chamber deep within the largest spire. The doors closed behind them with a heavy clang, leaving only silence and the faint glow of torches on the walls. Daniel sat against the wall, his cuffs biting into his skin. "This doesn't look good," he muttered. The queen stood tall, her eyes burning in the dim light. "They doubt me," she said, her voice low. "They see your presence as weakness. To them compassion is betrayal, and yet, I will not deny what you did for me." Daniel looked at her carefully. "Even if it costs you your crown?" For the first time he saw her hesitate. The weight of her people, her throne, her legacy, all pressed upon her. And yet when she finally answered, her voice was steady. "Yes, even then." Hours passed. At last the doors opened. 2 guards entered, pulling Daniel and the queen to their feet. They were led into the council hall, a vast chamber with walls carved from dark stone lit by fires that burned blue. At the far end, a circle of warlords waited. Their crests were high, their armor gleaming. These were the leaders of the Crithari clans, the most ruthless warriors of their people. The leader of Daniel's captors stepped forward. "Our queen has returned," he announced. "But she returns with shame. She protects a human." Gasps echoed through the hall. The warlord's eyes burned with disbelief and anger. One of them, a massive figure with scars across his face, stood. "Is this true? Do you defend this weak creature, this enemy of our kind?" The queen's voice was steady, clear. "Yes, he saved my life, and I will not see him harmed." The hall erupted with shouts. Words like dishonor, betrayal, and weakness filled the air. The warlords struck the ground with their weapons, their voices rising like a storm. Daniel felt the weight of it pressing down on him. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was the reason their queen stood accused. Finally, the scarred warlord raised his hand for silence. "If this is truly your will, my queen, then prove your strength. Face the trial. Show us you have not fallen to weakness." Murmurs spread through the hall. Daniel frowned. "Trial? What trial?" he whispered. The queen did not look at him, but her voice was cold and certain. "Trial by combat. They will test me. If I lose, I die, and so do you." Daniel's heart sank. He had expected danger, but not this. He looked at her, chained but still proud, standing before her people with no fear. The warlords waited, their eyes fixed on her. Finally, she raised her head high. "I accept." The hall roared with approval, though some voices still carried doubt. Daniel, however, felt only dread. He was caught in a world not his own, judged by laws he could not understand. And yet when he looked at the queen, he saw something more than fear or anger. He saw resolve. She would not abandon him. Even here, surrounded by her own people, facing death itself, she would keep her word. And for the first time since the war began, Daniel wondered if the galaxy might change, not through weapons, but through the bond that had begun in the ashes of battle. The council hall grew silent after the queen accepted the trial. The blue flames flickered against the dark stone, throwing tall shadows of the warlords across the chamber. Every Crithari warrior's eyes burned with expectation. They wanted proof. They wanted to see if their queen was still the unshakable figure of strength, or if kindness to a human had broken her. Daniel stood between guards, his wrists bound with energy cuffs. His heart pounded. The words "trial by combat" echoed in his mind. He had seen Crithari fights before, brutal duels where strength was everything and mercy had no place. The scarred warlord stepped forward. His voice carried like thunder. "Tomorrow at dawn the trial will begin. The queen will fight to prove her honor. If she wins, she remains our ruler. If she falls, both she and the human will die." The council roared in approval. The judgment was made. Daniel was dragged back to the chamber where he and the queen had been kept. The doors closed with a heavy sound, leaving them in silence once more. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel finally broke the quiet. "You don't have to do this for me. You could have let them kill me, and they would have welcomed you back." The queen's eyes turned to him, sharp as blades. "And betray what I owe you?" "No, a Crithari does not forget a life debt." Daniel shook his head. "This isn't just about a debt. They're your people, your throne. You could lose everything." Her voice was low, steady. "Perhaps. But what would I be if I stood upon a throne built on betrayal? I will fight, not only for myself, but for you as well." Daniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had never asked for this, never expected it. Yet here she was, a queen feared across the galaxy, risking all she had because he had chosen kindness once. The night was long. The queen sat quietly, her eyes closed, gathering her strength. Daniel watched her, feeling both fear and admiration. She was still recovering from her wounds, though she hid it well. Against one warlord she might stand a chance. But he suspected the council would not make it so simple. Finally, he spoke again. "Then let me fight too." The queen opened her eyes and stared at him in disbelief. "You against a Krithari warrior? You would be crushed in moments, I know," Daniel admitted. "But if I stand beside you even for a moment, it shows them something. It shows that humans aren't weak, that maybe mercy doesn't make us prey. And if I fall, at least I'll fall standing with you." The queen studied him carefully. At first, she thought his words foolish. Yet as she looked into his eyes, she saw no fear, only determination. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she nodded. "Very well, Daniel. Then tomorrow you will stand with me." At dawn, the trial began. The entire Krithari camp gathered around the arena, a circle of stone carved into the earth, lit by burning fires. The air thrummed with chants and the sound of weapons striking against shields. Daniel and the queen were led into the center. The chains were removed, but guards stood ready should either try to flee. Across from them, 3 warlords stepped forward. Massive, armored, their weapons gleaming with blue fire. The crowd roared in approval at the sight of them. Daniel's stomach twisted. 3, not 1. The council wanted to make sure this trial was not a mere formality. It was meant to break the queen. The scarred warlord raised his arm. His voice echoed across the arena. "Let the trial of the queen begin." The warlords attacked. The first clash was thunderous. One warlord rushed the queen with a swing of his plasma blade. She met it head-on, claws sparking against the glowing weapon. The ground shook beneath the force of their strikes. Daniel barely had time to react before another warlord came for him. He ducked clumsily, rolling across the dirt. His weapon, little more than a scavenged blade from the camp, felt light in his hands, almost useless. But he stood his ground. The warlord sneered at him, clearly expecting the fight to end quickly. But Daniel remembered his training. He dodged, blocked, and struck back, not with the strength of a Krithari, but with speed and stubborn will. His strikes barely dented the armor, but he refused to fall. The queen noticed. Even as she fought 2 warlords at once, she saw Daniel standing against impossible odds. The crowd jeered at him, mocking his weakness. Yet he did not yield. His courage was louder than their voices. Her heart stirred with something unfamiliar, a pride not for herself but for him. Minutes stretched like hours. The queen fought fiercely, her claws slashing, her strength fueled by something greater than survival. Daniel fought desperately, his body bruised and cut, yet he held on. At one moment, a warlord struck him across the chest, sending him to the ground. The crowd cheered, certain he would not rise again. But Daniel pushed himself up, coughing, blood on his lips, and raised his blade once more. The queen roared, her fury blazing. With a surge of strength, she drove her claws into one warlord's chest, dropping him to the ground. The crowd fell silent. A queen who fought for a human? This was not the weakness they had expected, it was power. Now 2 warlords remained. They pressed harder, but the queen fought with renewed fire, her strikes faster, her movement sharper. Daniel, though nearly spent, managed to distract the second long enough for her to strike him down. At last, only the scarred warlord remained. He towered over them, his blade glowing bright. He looked at Daniel with disgust. "You shame her with your weakness." Daniel raised his weapon anyway, standing beside the queen. "Maybe, but I'm still here." The queen stepped forward, her voice like steel. "He is no shame. He is strength of another kind." The final clash was fierce. The scarred warlord fought with all his might, but the queen's will could not be broken. With one final strike, she knocked his blade aside and pinned him to the ground. The arena fell silent. Breathing heavily, the queen stood tall, her claws dripping with victory. Daniel staggered to her side, barely able to stay on his feet, but still standing. She raised her head high and spoke to all who watched. "This human showed me mercy when I should have died. He stood beside me when he could have fled. Strength is not only in claws and blades, it is in loyalty, in courage, in compassion. If you call that weakness, then you have never known true power." For a moment, the crowd said nothing. Then slowly, voices rose, not in anger but in awe. The chant spread, growing louder. "Queen! Queen! Queen!" When the trial ended, the warlords could not deny her victory. She had proven her strength, but more than that, she had planted a seed of doubt in their hearts. Perhaps the way of endless conquest was not the only path. Daniel leaned against her, exhausted. She looked at him, her sharp eyes softening for the briefest moment. "You fought like a fool," she said quietly. Daniel managed a faint smile. "Maybe, but we made it." The Queen gave a low, thoughtful growl. For the first time, she wondered if her people might learn from humans, not to conquer but to change. And deep inside, she knew the galaxy would not remain the same. The battlefield of the trial was silent now. Smoke and dust drifted across the arena, carried by the soft morning breeze. The Queen stood tall, her claws and armor marked by battle, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Daniel leaned on her side, bruised, battered, but alive. The crowd of Crithari warriors and council members had gone quiet, their eyes wide with disbelief. The Queen looked around at them, her voice strong and clear. "Today you saw strength tested. But do not forget what true strength is. It is not only the power to strike or the courage to fight. It is the courage to act with honor, even when others do not expect it. It is the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The assembly of Crithari warriors murmured among themselves. Some were angered, some confused, and some thoughtful. Daniel had watched the way the Queen had fought for him, seen the way her words silenced even the most aggressive warlords. He realized with quiet awe that this battle had changed not only her, but perhaps her entire people. After the trial, the Queen returned to her chambers. Daniel followed, weak but determined to remain at her side. "Are you all right?" she asked, her sharp gaze softer now than it had been in days. "I'm fine," Daniel said, wincing as he adjusted his arm. "A little battered, but I can handle it." She studied him, the weight of her long reign evident in the lines of her face. "You fought well," she said finally. "For a human, you are remarkable." Daniel chuckled faintly. "I just did what I had to. You showed me the same. That's why we made it through." She nodded slowly. "It is rare to find someone who stands for more than themselves. Among my kind, it is almost unheard of. You have taught me something I did not know I could learn." Daniel smiled faintly, feeling a strange warmth. He had not expected to teach a queen, let alone one who could crush an entire army with a swing of her claws. Yet here he was, and somehow the bond they shared had shifted the tide of thought, even in the heart of the Crithari. Over the following days, word of the trial spread through the Crithari clans. Whispers turned into discussions, and discussions turned into debates. Many warriors questioned the old ways. Could it be that strength was not measured only by victories in battle, but also by courage, honor, and compassion? The Queen, however, focused on her duties. She restored order among her people, healed the wounds of those who had fought, and ensured that Daniel received care for his injuries. Despite his human weakness, she treated him with respect, recognizing the courage that had impressed even the fiercest warriors. One evening, she called Daniel to her side as she gazed out at the stars. "The galaxy is changing," she said quietly. "What we have done here, this act of mercy, of courage, it will not be forgotten. You have changed more than just me, Daniel. You have shown my people a new way to see strength." Daniel looked at her, feeling the truth in her words. "Maybe that's all any of us can do," he said. "Show others that there's another way, and hope it spreads." The Queen's eyes softened. "Perhaps you are right. But do not think this will be easy. Change is never easy, even for the strongest of warriors. My people may resist, even resent it at first. And yet, something has shifted. I feel it." Weeks passed, and the Queen's reforms began quietly. Some warriors resisted, clinging to the old ways. Others watched Daniel, noting how his courage had stood beside their queen, and began to reconsider their assumptions about humans. Daniel spent his days helping repair the camp, teaching simple techniques that could help the Crithari improve efficiency, and sharing stories of human perseverance. Each time he acted with patience and kindness, the Queen's people took note, and slowly, walls of suspicion began to crumble. One morning, as they walked along the cliff edge overlooking the valley, Daniel asked, "Do you think it will last? The change, what we've started?" The Queen considered the question carefully. "Time will tell. But humans have a way of surprising even the strongest of us. Your courage, your persistence, your willingness to act with honor even when it is not expected. That is something we Crithari are not used to seeing. Perhaps it is enough to start a new way of thinking." Daniel nodded. "It feels strange, doesn't it? To know that a small act, Something simple can make such a difference? She smiled faintly, a rare gesture from the queen. Yes, and yet it is true. You are small in size, fragile compared to my warriors, and yet your spirit is larger than most. That is why you matter. For the first time, Daniel felt truly seen, not just as a human, not just as a soldier, but as someone who could change the world by being himself. Months later, the queen's influence was clear. Some of the Krithari clans had begun to adopt new ways of thinking. They trained not only in strength but also in strategy, patience, and cooperation. They learned that mercy could be a weapon just as powerful as a claw or blade. Daniel, though still a human among a galaxy of alien warriors, had become a symbol. His courage, his willingness to act with honor, and his refusal to strike without reason inspired more than just the queen. Stories of his bravery spread among humans and Krithari alike. One evening, the queen stood with Daniel on the deck of her ship, looking out at the stars. The battlefields of the past were distant memories now, replaced by the possibilities of what could be. "You have done more than survive," she said softly. "You have shown my people what humans can be. Perhaps one day our two species can stand together, not as enemies but as allies." Daniel smiled. "I hope so. The galaxy is too big to waste on hate." The queen nodded. "It will take time. But if there is one lesson I have learned, it is that even small acts of courage and kindness can ripple farther than we imagine. Even the smallest human can leave a mark on the stars." As they prepared to leave the Krithari homeworld, Daniel reflected on all that had happened. He had been a simple soldier, trained for battle and survival. He had expected only to live or die in the wars between humans and Krithari. But through an act of kindness, he had changed a queen, her people, and perhaps even the future of an entire galaxy. The queen turned to him, her armor gleaming under the twin suns of their world. "You have made me stronger, Daniel, not with claws or weapons, but with your heart. And for that you have my respect, my trust, my gratitude." Daniel shook his head with a faint laugh. "I didn't do it for thanks, I just couldn't do anything else." She studied him quietly. "That is what makes you remarkable. That is what makes humans extraordinary." And in that moment, Daniel realized that humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons, technology, or numbers. It was in the courage to act with honor, the choice to show kindness even when the odds were against them, and the ability to inspire others simply by standing for what was right. As their ship rose into the sky, leaving the Krithari world behind, the queen watched the stars and whispered quietly to herself, "The galaxy will not remain the same, because of one human." And somewhere deep inside, Daniel felt the truth of that statement. He had not conquered worlds. He had not destroyed enemies. But he had changed the course of lives and hearts. The galaxy was vast, full of conflict and fear, but for the first time, he knew that even a single act of courage and compassion could shine brighter than any weapon. It could create alliances, shift loyalties, and leave a mark no one could erase. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, Daniel and the queen both understood that the universe had witnessed something rare. Humanity, in its small but extraordinary way, had left its imprint on even the strongest of hearts. For the first time, humans were not merely survivors. They were teachers, inspirers, and perhaps the catalysts of a better future. And that was a kind of victory greater than any battle could offer.